This is Gabe Davis with the Buffalo Bills, and this is the NFL Report.
Welcome into a brand new Tuesday edition of the NFL Report. James Palmer, Steve Wyche with you. We have a slam show. We're going to get Torry Holt into the Hall of Fame, Steve. We're continuing to stump to get the wide receiver from the greatest show on turf into the Hall of Fame. He's going to join us today on the NFL Report. Mark Ross is going to break down what's going on at the top of the draft. What should the Bears do? A front office perspective. Pull back the curtain there. Omar Ruiz was at that Cardinals and Eagles game. He's going to tell us about what's going on in that Philadelphia Eagles locker room. Also, the NFL Report's insider, Mike Garafolo, going to join us about maybe some possible head coach openings that are on the horizon. But Steve, let's start with the playoff picture. It's starting to come to fruition here. Look at what we have starting with the NFC. We have a couple of divisions still up for grabs. Haven't been clinched yet, but we do know the number one spot, that's not moving. We know the Cowboys can clinch the NFC East. The Lions could be the 2 or the 3. The Eagles could be the 5 or the 2. There's still some shuffling that could happen within the NFC, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely, JP. And like you said, there's only 2 spots available, but we're still unknown who's going to win the NFC South and who's going to win the NFC East. And JP, a little bit later, we're also going to have Jeff Chadiha on with his first read column, and we're going to have that conversation as well. But since it's 2024 and it's New Year's resolutions, let's see if some of those teams who are coming after the number 1 seeded 49ers can make a resolution to possibly beat them. James, let's think for them. Do you have any team in the NFC who might be able to get past the Niners, who have the Super Bowl or the NFC's route to the Super Bowl coming through Santa Clara?
I'm going to go with the Detroit Lions, and it's for 2 major reasons. One, Steve, they had that game 1 in Dallas, where Dallas plays so well, aside of the fact of the way things ended with the officiating. But I do think with the way that happened and the way type of coach that Dan Campbell is, he might use this as motivation, propelling them into the playoffs and how they move forward. He did it last year when they started 1-6. Then they go 8-2. What do? They use that end of the season to propel them into this year. They haven't lost back-to-back games this season. That's one thing I've always noticed with this group is when they have adversity, they get blown out by the Ravens. What ends up happening? They win the next 3. The other part of it, Steve, is that I do feel like with all the weapons they have, Sam Laporta playing dominant tight end as a rookie. You have Amar St. Brown that's dominating over 1,300 yards as a wide receiver. 2 backs, over 1,000 scrimmage yards. You have the ability to score points, score them quickly, score them early. And if you can make the 49ers play from behind, perhaps that's where the Lions could find some success if they can get out early if this matchup ends up happening. And the other last part of it is, Steve, they have a very underrated offensive line, which you need to play good offensive line football against this 49ers defensive front. They're good in the trenches. They're physical. Maybe this would be the team I would pick, but man, San Francisco looks good right now, bouncing back.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for anybody to get through the 49ers. As deep as they are, they're going to have some time to rest and heal up because they've got that bye. Probably aren't going to play their players week 18. But you know what? I'm going to talk about the LA Rams having the best shot. And it sounds crazy because the Niners have basically bought a block of property in the LA Rams' heads and beaten them 8 out of the last 9 times. But, JP, the majority of those wins have been one-possession games. These teams know each other well. So I think that familiarity gives the Rams, if there is an advantage to have from other these challengers in the NFC, it's that familiarity, right? And because they know each other so well, the coaches, a lot of the players, and the fact, as you mentioned with Detroit, the Rams have the offensive weapons, especially a wide receiver, and now with Kyron Williams in the running game, to get out to a lead and to make the 49ers play from behind. Now, one thing about the Rams also, their defense is a bend but don't break defense. They find ways to come up with timely stops, which would be very important against the 49ers. Now, I'm not picking Dallas. Neither one of us did. Dallas's ability to stop the run, I think it will be a huge issue playing a team like the 49ers. We saw how the Niners boat raced them earlier this season. So I'm going to stay within the division, and if they meet for a third time, that will be the case. All right, now let's flip it over to the AFC. Let's look at the playoff picture there where the Baltimore Ravens have secured, with authority, the number 1 seed. But you see Miami at number 2.
With authority is right.
Miami's at number 2, but right now they could lose that. They could flip with the Buffalo Bills. They've got a huge Sunday night head-to-head clash. But you see a team like the Cleveland Browns, they've secured a spot. The Chiefs have secured a spot this weekend, but there are 3 open playoff positions in the AFC. So, JP, let's go back to these Baltimore Ravens. They're the top seed. Let's go back to this New Year's resolution. Is there any team in the AFC that can beat a team like the Ravens, which is absolutely destroying anyone they encounter lately?
This might sound crazy, Steve, but I'm picking a team that's not even certain to be in the postseason. They could wind up the 2. They could wind up in the back end of the postseason. They could be out. That's the Buffalo Bills. And I think it's solely because of Josh Allen. I think Lamar Jackson is probably the front runner for the MVP. You know who might finish as the runner-up when everything is said and done? It might be Josh Allen. And I think if you look through all of the postseason, you look at all of those teams, ask every defensive coordinator, what's a quarterback you don't want to face? I would say Josh Allen's probably pretty high on a lot of these defensive coordinators' lists. And I think the reason why they have a shot to do this, if they end up matching up with one another, is because of Josh Allen's ability to make defenses play the second play. We talk about that so much with Patrick Mahomes. You talk about it with Josh Allen. That the first play is what's on schedule. The second play, which is what's off schedule. When a defense has to play longer, that's what Josh Allen does. And I want to see more 12 personnel out of this team, Steve. I want to see Dalton Kincaid. I want to see Dawson Knox on the field at the same time. I want to see them put teams in binds, but I also see them run the football so well. We saw them run the football and lean on it this past week in the second half. What does that do? That keeps Lamar Jackson off the field. I think they're balanced. I think this defense right now, as we talk about a team that nobody wants to play, we keep saying that's the Bills. I think the defense is actually a big part of that as well with the way they're playing up front and on the back end. I'm going to say the Bills are probably the team built to go and maybe take down the Ravens, who I just don't know like saying that sentence, Steve, because the Ravens are so good right now.
I look, no one is going to have any issue with you saying the Buffalo Bills because they've got the experience and they've got the players to possibly match up against the Ravens. You know, it's a shame a couple weeks ago we probably would have said the Dolphins, but the fact that both of their edge rushers now with Bradley Chubb down for the season, Jalen Phillips out, that really hampers them against a team like the Ravens. Here's one for you. You know the last time the Ravens lost?
What do you got?
It was November 12th. You know who they lost to? The Cleveland Browns. And that was before Joe Flacco. The Cleveland Browns can be the team that could upset the Baltimore Ravens, as crazy as it sounds. But again, I'm going back to familiarity. They know this would be the third time both teams will have played each other should they face off in the playoffs. So it works for both sides. But that defense that Cleveland continues to put together, they actually have players that can spy Lamar Jackson and still do their jobs, like linebacker Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, J-O-K, as he's known. He can play that spy role, right? So this to me is an intriguing matchup, and what Joe Flacco has been able to do to open up that passing game, to let the Browns and that pretty good offensive line do what they do in a quick passing game, moving pocket passing game, to do some things that way. I just look at all of these other teams, and outside of the Bills, and I'm with you on the Bills, I think Cleveland probably has the best shot. Those injuries are a problem. Go ahead. I can't believe I'm not saying Kansas City either.
No. I love that you're saying this. Really quick, I just want to say, remember 2019, the last time the Ravens had a bye in the postseason, and Lamar won the MVP.
Yep.
They were knocked out in the first round. They were knocked out in the divisional round by the Tennessee Titans. What if Joe Flacco goes in, former Baltimore Raven, and they have Lamar as the MVP, and a first-round bye, and Joe Flacco knocks him out, Steve?
Too juicy. It's too juicy. It has to happen. It has to happen. Well, look, you know what else is juicy? Neither one of us said the Eagles will be threatening the 49ers in the NFC. Coming up next, we are going to look at the dysfunction of the operation on both sides of the ball. It's Mike Garafolo and Omar Ruiz join the NFL Report. And it's also a podcast, people. Make sure to listen. All right, welcome back to the NFL Report. I'm Steve White, my guy James Palmer. JP, we are now joined by NFL Network insider Mike Garafolo. Mike G, happy
the NFL Report's insider.
That's right, and the insiders, NFL Report's insider. But Mike G, 2024, we always know, as happy as people are to get to the new year, there's a handful of coaches who will no longer be head coaches not long after each new year. But let's get to this, because we're less than a week away from probably a lot of decisions being made. Some might already be made, but just not made public. from folks I'm speaking to, they're not thinking that there's going to be 10 coach firings like a lot of folks were assuming a month ago.
Yeah, we're probably south of that, but we'll have a nice solid chunk to work with, Steve. We always do. It's very rare if you're, under 5. I don't think we'll be there. We're in the 5 to 6, 7, 8 range potentially, and we're looking at a couple of really cornerstone guys. And I thought a couple of weeks ago, Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick, we may be coming to the end of both of those tenures. Not so sure on either one of them right now, and I'll start with Belichick. I'll start with Belichick. There's still going to be a conversation between him and Robert Kraft about the direction of the franchise. I know that my sense is Kraft would prefer to not fire him, right? Like, would prefer for him to continue to be the coach of the Patriots and get the record for most coaches, or for most wins for a coach as a New England Patriots coach. I got the sense from someone who seemed to have a little bit of a beat on this, and look, nobody really knows except Robert Jonathan Kraft and maybe a select few others within the Patriots organization, but I got the sense from someone who has sort of a beat on this that Belichick could potentially present to Kraft, here's my plan moving forward. Does he take a step back from personnel, allow someone else to handle that part of his job since that's been a big part of it for 20 years? And could he potentially stick around? Maybe. Stay tuned. And then as for Pete Carroll,
Mike, if you're talking about that scenario, you're talking about 2 seasons for Belichick to get that record. I mean, for him to knock it out in one season would seem highly, highly improbable.
Yeah, potentially. But you know what? They're in a position draft-wise to get themselves a quarterback. And all of a sudden, doesn't that change things? Like, if you get it's the offensive side of the ball, Steve. That's what it is. I mean, they're still playing good defense.
Defense has been
great. They're still playing smart. They're still playing hard. It's not a question of those things. And speaking of playing hard, those players are going to take the field on Sunday in Foxborough against the Jets, not knowing if that's going to be Belichick's last game. I would be utterly floored if the Patriots lose this game. Like, how could you send him out potentially with a loss to the Jets?
Right.
So I know that game really doesn't matter for playoff standings, but it'll matter for some folks who are into some other things. Just let you know that you may want to look at the Patriots in that one. It's if you get yourself a quarterback and whether it's Bill O'Brien or somebody else as a proven offensive coordinator, suddenly things can look a little bit different. But I do think he needs some help on the personnel end, and Dave Ziegler's free these days. He was in New England previously. Yeah, there are a couple other options. You can bring some guys in.
You mentioned the veteran coaches, Mike. You mentioned kind of, Bill Belichick. You mentioned Pete Carroll. They've been there for a long time. The third one, there was some rumblings, but you didn't mention him there, and Mike Tomlin. I just want to throw this scenario out there and tell me what's what. If one of these teams that is just desperate for his services calls up the Steelers and says, we want to trade for Mike Tomlin, we want to offer him blank, the Steelers have to tell him, right? Like, where do things stand in Pittsburgh right now with Mike Tomlin? Because this is the first time we're starting to hear little rumblings about, is it time? Would he ever be interested in leaving himself, though?
I don't believe so. I think he certainly loves his job, and he certainly loves the organization, and he knows what it's like to be the head coach of a cornerstone franchise in the NFL. So I haven't gotten any inkling that he's looking to move on. Now, he's going to have to conduct a offensive coordinator search this offseason.
Sure.
He's had Mike Sullivan in the role, and Sullivan and the offense have looked a lot better the last couple of weeks with Mason Rudolph, so I'm sure he'll at least get consideration for the job right now. So potentially you could see a little bit of a different look offensively for the Steelers in 2024. But, I know the argument here, right? Like, you could have 9 to 10 wins guaranteed every single year, but you're in it to win the Super Bowl, right? And the Steelers just haven't knocked on that door recently. Yeah, I know a lot of other franchises would say, hey, we'd love to have the sustained success the Steelers have had and be in the postseason, be in the tournament, like they like to call it, every single year, because that gives you a chance. I don't think we're looking at the Steelers team this year and say, well, if they get in with one more victory here, that's a team you don't want to see. We're not fashioning run here for the Steelers in the postseason, so they're not going to get to that point. And so now you're going to have that conversation of, are we just continuing to be middling with Mike Tomlin? I do get the sense that the Steelers are going to stand pat with Tomlin as their head coach in 24, barring some kind of unforeseen change here.
All right, Mike, we're getting a little tight on time, but the NFC South could dictate some head coaching futures, what happens in Week 18. You've got Arthur Smith with the Falcons, Todd Bowles with the Buccaneers, and Dennis Allen with the Saints. what does it seem like with those three? Because they all three could be kept, or they all three, or at least two of the three might be gone.
I believe Arthur Smith is on the shakiest of grounds. Arthur Blank, the owner, did indicate that he was leaning toward keeping him, but that was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Wanted to see how things play out. If they don't play well against the New Orleans Saints, it does feel like it could be time for Arthur Smith, who made a big bet on Desmond Ridder that did not pay off this season right now. As for Todd Bowles and Dave Canales, the offensive coordinator, I think the hay should already be in the barn there. I mean, this was a team that knew they were going to pare this thing down this season. We're not going to spend. We're going to get their books back in order. And for this team to be on the verge of, just beat the Panthers. Beat the Panthers. You're in the postseason. That should shut the door. Number one, not only will that shut the door on potentially the Buccaneers moving on from Todd Bowles, but number two, it makes Dave Canales a sneaky head coaching candidate. And I say sneaky because I don't think he gets himself a job this season, but he gets himself some interviews. And don't
He's
forget,
going to get
Interviews, yep.
Yeah, and he fulfills a Rooney Rule requirement because he is a minority interview, which is not why he's going to get interviewed. He's going to get interviewed because he's a exciting, energetic, young coach who had some good offensive schemes that he brought down there and some good offensive coaching down there. Yeah. So he will get some interviews down there. And as for Dennis Allen, all indications are they're going to continue with him as the head coach. I'd like to see what they're going to do to reset down there because they're going to have to make some hard decisions from a personnel standpoint, but it seems like they're clicking at the right time. It may be too late, but they are clicking at the right time.
Yeah. Nuts. Mike is going to be absolutely slammed for the next week, guys. Just to let you know, Steve. Mike will, if you want to contact him, do it now because he's going to be busy leading up to Monday.
Hey, man,
Mike,
he's going to do it well.
Buddy.
Mike's going to do it well. Appreciate you, bro.
You got it, guys. Thank you.
All right, check out this. Steve, the Eagles made a change as their defensive coordinator.
Oh, boy.
They go from Sean Desai to Matt Patricia. Things haven't been great since the switch. And Matt Patricia running this defense. We look at where they're at right now. They haven't gotten takeaways really all season long, but still haven't really been able to do it. Omar Ruiz, Steve, was at this game with the Arizona Cardinals coming into the link with their head coach, Jonathan Gannon, former defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles, and they go and just run up and down the field at the link. Omar, there is not going to be another change. We know that. It's going to be Matt Patricia moving forward. They're not going back to Sean Desai. But what is wrong with this Eagles defense, and is it essentially something that can't be fixed? What did you gather in Philadelphia?
Yeah, what I gather is they don't know. I mean, there are no specific answers to those questions, and they've been asking them for several weeks now.
Uh-oh.
I asked Jalen Hurts the other day, after the game on Sunday, why they haven't been closing the last couple losses. Obviously, they had the last-second touchdown by Drew Lock and the Seattle Seahawks on Monday Night Football to lose that game. And then obviously this one, Kyler Murray and James Conner, the game-winning touchdown in the final minute to lose that one. And all Hurts could offer was they just got to use that as learning lessons, stick together, have that sense of urgency to get better. Now, Brandon Graham did have some specifics, and he pointed to the injuries on the team. Avonte Maddox came back after missing some time. He had that missed tackle against Greg Dortch that allowed Dortch to get inside the 10 and led to the game-winning touchdown. And he said next time Maddox is in that position in the playoffs, he's going to make that play. They had Nick Morrow, their linebacker. He just came back. Zach Cunningham ought to be back soon, another linebacker. Darius Slay, one of the best corners in football. He should be back soon. So when they get healthy, that ought to make a difference on defense. But Nick Sirianni was asked yesterday is how the weight of the season is getting on these Eagles. And he said, well, that's just expectations. They know what this operation looks like. Remember last year, obviously, they were just a few minutes away from winning the Super Bowl. There's that Dortch play I was telling you about. And because they got so close, they are so hungry, they are putting pressure on themselves, more pressure than any outside of the locker room can provide. So they're looking to get it fixed. And I will provide some history here. All this, Joe Flacco talk, he's been in the news. It reminds me of that 2012 season with the Ravens. This is an Eagles team that's still loaded with talent. But if you remember that Ravens team in 2012, they lost 4 out of 5 heading into the postseason. And then Joe Flacco and the rest of them got hot and they went wild. They won the Super Bowl. So the Eagles still believe that the answers are in their locker room. They just don't know what they are right now. But history does show that a team that's talented can put it together and make a run here in the postseason. They think they can.
That's a real good comparison. The one huge difference I would say is there were no questions about that coaching staff in Baltimore, that staff was absolutely loaded and stacked on both sides of the ball. Well, Omar, let's go ahead.
But you remember, Steve, they made it. Hold on, they made a change at offensive coordinator. Remember, they fired Cam Cameron. They brought Jim Caldwell in. So there were questions there, and they figured it out.
Absolutely, and they figured out with the right guy, and Jim Caldwell. So, and that's what I'm saying. So,
exactly.
They pulled the trigger at the right time, and it worked. And look, getting back to the Super Bowl is always tough. We're seeing some of the struggles that every team has getting back. Kansas City, some of the struggles they're going.
KC
but
as well.
Omar, I want to flip over to Arizona because they did score 4 times there in the second half to come back and upset. And from what we have seen, this is not a good team. They're going to be picking at the top end of the draft. But quarterback Kyler Murray, since he has come back from that knee injury, Omar, this has looked like a different offense, right? Are the Arizona Cardinals, you live in Arizona, you're around this team, are they sold that Kyler is going to be their guy moving forward?
Yeah, from every conversation I've had, Kyler Murray certainly is their franchise quarterback. And I think bigger picture, this ought to be one of those performances that Kyler Murray puts to rest that narrative that he doesn't prepare, that he's not putting in the work behind the scenes and studying tape, because I spoke with offensive coordinator Drew Petzing yesterday, and that's all Kyler Murray could do last week was prepare, watch film, attend meetings. He was sick all week long. He only practiced in a limited role on Friday, but he was in every meeting, even on Zoom when he wasn't in the building on Wednesday and Thursday, and that allowed him to play the way he did, with that 25 of 31, 232 yards, 3 touchdowns, and to come back from that pick six. Remember, he had that pick six. Sidney Brown took it back 99 yards, and they didn't buckle after that. He stayed put, and he had the wow plays, the James Conner touchdown pass, one of those thrilling Kyler Murray plays, and Petzing says those are always going to be there. What he was most impressed by Kyler Murray was doing the easy plays, making an incompletion instead of taking a sack, staying in rhythm, finding the easy outlets. Those are the things that are sustainable for this offense. Those are the things they can build around. And then big picture within the team, remember we talked to Jonathan Gannon in training camp, and he talked about being process-driven, ultimately knows he's judged by the results that they have, but they're focused on the process. And when they get a big win in Philadelphia, the way they got a big win in Pittsburgh a couple weeks ago, the way they beat the loaded Dallas Cowboys earlier in the season, those are all wins that validate the process that they're going through, instilling that program. And when you look at the Cardinals, they have a NFL high 11 rookies that have started for them this year. So consistency is always an issue when you play that many young players. But obviously they're building that foundation. These wins can go a long way to what could be a turnaround season in 2024.
All right, Omar, sir, in under 30 seconds, tell me, what do they do with pick number 4? Are they protecting Kyler Murray, giving him a weapon, trading back? What's going to happen?
I say they give him a weapon. Obviously, once DeAndre Hopkins left this past season, things haven't been the same. Hollywood Brown's been in and out of the lineup, but I think the way Trey McBride has come on at tight end, the way James Conner, and how about Michael Carter there as the 1-2 punch on Sunday to provide some, weapons on the ground. That was another thing Petzing said, that the attitude that they've had developing the offense, they want to be bullies. The way they've been able to run the football all year long really has been something for them, so they can continue to develop that attitude on the ground. You give Kyler Murray some weapons to surround him. This could be one of those dark horse type of teams in 2024 that bounces back in a big way.
Omar's called the dark horse shot? Okay.
Whoa.
All right, O.
All right.
Okay. All right.
Wow. Listen,
it's January of 2024. It's never too early to start talking about the 2024 season.
Here we go.
Here he comes. Marvin Harrison Jr. transforms the entire Cardinals organization into a dark horse contender. Omar, appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah.
All right, coming up, we got Mark Ross. He is going to tell us what happens in front of that 4th overall pick. How about the number 1 overall pick? What do the Bears do? Is Justin Fields part of the plans moving forwards? We'll see. More on the NFL Report. Welcome back to the NFL Report. Remember, if you're not watching us, make sure you're listening to us. You can take us on the go. Steve and I are everywhere. And right now, we have Mark Ross joining the show. Mark, you know everything that goes on behind the scenes within the front office side of things in the NFL. When you're at Soldier Field on Sunday and you're hearing the fans chanting, "We want Justin, we want Justin," oh boy, does Ryan Poles have a decision to make because he has been locked into the #1 overall pick. What goes on right now in Chicago as they're weighing every really option they have, which also includes seeing who wants to come up possibly for that #1 pick?
Well, first of all, I'm sure he heard it, but you got to do this. You can't listen to the fans, fellas. The first time I was in this position, way back in 1999 with the Philadelphia Eagles, when we had the second pick, and the fans were chanting, "We want Ricky Williams," all the way up till draft night, and then booed my man Donovan McNabb as we drafted him.
Oh, he got booed.
We blocked out all the noise leading up to that draft. Of course, they were going to come burn down Veterans Stadium if we didn't take Ricky and all that. No one's ever apologized for that. But anyway, Ryan Poles has to tune out the fans but listen to his team. If his team and those players believe in Justin Fields, that definitely has to be taken into consideration. But it's really all about how the coaching staff and the scouting staff feel about Justin Fields and what they've seen from him this year, and also what they think he can still contribute. But also comparing Justin Fields with that #1 pick to who's coming out. It's so easy always to just say, yep, there's these quarterbacks, let's take one. Well, the scouting and coaching staff may not think any of these guys are better than Justin Fields, so you have to compare him to Caleb Williams. You have to compare him to Drake May, each individual quarterback that's coming out, and say, okay, is Justin better than these guys? And then make the decision from there. Or, hey, if we move down and get Marvin Harrison Jr., does that make Justin Fields better? So there's tons of options that they have there, whether to stick with him or to take one of those guys if they love him, or move down enough to still get the quarterback that they love or want, pair him with Justin Fields, or, hey, trade Justin Fields, get more draft capital because we've already got this draft capital now and that second-round pick that's essentially a first-round pick too. So many options at Ryan Poles' disposal. I'd love to be in his position. I know people are like, I wouldn't want to be Ryan Poles. I'd love to have that situation and all those options and working with your staff and coaching staff and scouting staff, piecing that stuff together.
Well, Mark, you say you'd love to be in his position, but the one thing that it seems like he's going to be back, him and Matt Eberflus, but whether they're back also determines what's going on. But you talked about, they can trade back and do this. Let's look at some of the draft order and look at some of the teams that need quarterbacks. And then from your experience in the front office, tell us how you decide on which team you would like to go and how far back in the draft maybe you'd like to go. So let's start. Number 2 is the Commanders. Number 3, the Patriots. Number 4, the Cardinals. We don't think they need a quarterback. Number 5, the Giants. Very interesting. The 6, the Chargers, no quarterback. 7, Titans, they've got their quarterback. 8, Jets, they have their quarterback maybe for another year. 9 is the Bears again. Then here's where it gets interesting. 10 is the Falcons. 11 is the Raiders. 12 is the Vikings, which is super interesting. So, Mark, how far back? When you're looking at your team, do you say, okay, we can only go back to maybe in that 6 or 7 range? Or we can go all the way back to 10 with the Falcons because they can give us a mountain of bounty where we can add other draft picks to help support Justin Fields.
Yeah, at any time throughout the draft, but particularly at the top here, when you go through your draft meetings and you see your draft positioning, you want to trade back, but trade back so you still get a player you want and a player you love. You don't want to trade out and you're sitting there at 10, you're like, well, who do we take now? We got all the way back to 10, we got these draft picks, but we don't love anybody that's here. So number 1, you're looking at the compensation package wherever that falls to say, yep, we love this now, or a first-round pick for next year. That could be in the mix as well, or players and picks. So you're looking at the compensation, comparing that and saying, okay, what do we like the best? But then also to get to a certain point on your board where you have a group of players and you say, okay, we've got these 3 guys. We don't want to miss out on one of these guys. We want to get one of them. So we don't want to be at number 8 and sitting there with a player we don't like. You want to still trade, get a compensation package you really love, but still be in a position that you can get a player that you really want to have. You don't want to be put the name in and you got everybody looking in your room like, man, we don't want this guy. You still want to be in a position where everyone's saying, yep, we've still got our guy. but we got an excellent package of value for where we traded from at number 1.
I'm fascinated by it because also with Mark, the way that we're hearing Justin Fields has the locker room, how much you said you don't look at fans, but how much does that weigh into a front office when they know that the other 52 guys in that locker room want Justin Fields to stay? How much does that weigh into your evaluation of making this difficult decision? But you want the decision, you said.
Yo, no doubt. That's what it's made of. Easy stuff is easy. Layups are easy. Who's going to beat people off the dribble, hit these threes with someone in your face? That's what you want as a GM. You should relish that position to be in. And yes, you definitely have to take into account how your team feels about a quarterback and the belief. The belief is a huge thing. With the Giants, with Eli Manning, I said that was the biggest strength he had, is that the team believed in Eli. The 3 interceptions, whatever, they believed Eli's going to get it done. So that's a huge step. But Justin still has to show enough, and he's shown flashes. There still has to be that play that, okay, I know the team loves this guy, but, he can't even make these easy throws, or we don't think he's processing well enough. You still have to block that out what the team thinks and go with what your scouting staff and your coaching staff evaluates Justin Fields and his potential or viability, again, compared to who they could get in the draft, and say, Caleb Williams is going to be better than Justin Fields, and he can take us to another level. I know the team likes Justin, but just talent-wise, play-wise, we think he can take us to another level that Justin cannot take us to. So, yes, you weigh it in, but ultimately you can't let players make decisions for you. You take into account, but they can't make decisions. It just helps you and guides you a little bit if you have your guy.
Especially players who don't give you enough of a record as to where we're not even having a conversation like this because you're making a playoff.
They're playing
run.
right now, man.
Yeah, playing
They're
right
playing
now. Okay.
right now.
All right, hey, Mark Ross, thank you so much. We got to get going, but we're going to have you back next week because you got a whole lot of stuff going on.
We got a lot
to
talk about next week.
And remember, this is also a podcast. You can find us wherever you get your podcast. But coming up next, who's a member of the greatest show on turf, and for the 5th consecutive year, he's a Hall of Fame finalist. Torry Holt on the NFL Report right after the break.
Yeah.
Fires the middle. Torry Holt got it in traffic. Wow.
Throws the end zone. Touchdown Rams. Torry Holt.
He's in the open field. 10, 5.
Yeah!
Touchdown Torry Holt.
Yeah!
He's got a touchdown. Caught by Torry Holt. Touchdown Rams.
Holt and Bruce. Stay tuned.
Touchdown Torry Holt. Receiver there. Torry Holt's got it. Touchdown Rams.
Yes, yes. We won it. The world champion.
Oh, man, JP, that is such an awesome video. Now we were joined by the star of that big game, Torry Holt. Happy New Year to you, Torry.
Happy New Year to you guys, man. Thanks for having me on the NFL Report.
All right, well, look, it's going to be a new year because, once again, you are a Pro Football Hall of Fame finalist, Torry. We've been here before, bro. It's your 5th time. And I just kind of want to know, like, going through this the past couple of years and getting the phone call instead of the knock, has it globally, has it changed your perspective on this process at all? Like, am I going to get in? Is blah, blah, like, have you changed it all with this?
No, I've tried to stay the course, thankfully. I just kind of lean on my faith. But I tell you what, though, to be honest with you, Steve, it's an emotional roller coaster. It really is. Because that's not a day that goes by that I don't think about possibly being inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Think about that. There's only 371 members. There's only 28 receivers in the National Football League that are Pro Football Hall of Famers. Lord willing, I'll be 29th. I enjoyed the process. I learned something new every single year, but I just ride the wave, man. And it's really cool because it's a journey for me. I put something out on my Instagram, and I said the journey continues, and that's it. And I'm just staying down on it, like Killer Mike. I'm just staying down by law. I'm just staying down on it, waiting on my turn. But at the same time, really enjoying the moment because it is really special. There's so many men that's played in the National Football League, but there's only a few that's graced the hall. So hopefully soon I'll be gracing the hall, man.
Tor, you mentioned it being a roller coaster. I'm assuming this makes the roller coaster ride maybe a little bit more enjoyable. We've had Andre Johnson on the show. We've had Eddie George on the show. And those two guys specifically, and you know there's others, have been stumping for you personally to get in. They said it on our show. They're like, it's time for Torry to get in. When other guys that are waiting for their turn as well are stumping for you to get into the Hall, what does that kind of mean, that support from other guys that are also trying to get that gold jacket?
First and foremost, it's respect. It really is. That's because it's hard. It's tough to sustain a Hall of Fame level year in and year out. First and foremost, and for your peers to recognize you as a Hall of Fame, it just again kind of validates what type of player they thought you were, the type of competitor you were, the type of leader you were in your community, on your organization, and the representation that you every single year gave the National Football League. So that is really cool to hear that. Look, there's so many guys out there that I feel are Hall of Fame worthy as well, and I'm championing for them. I think back to one guy that comes to mind for me is, and I love him to death. He's a tremendous wide receiver. He was really dominant in his era. Was Sterling Sharp. And when I see Sterling, I automatically give him his flowers because he paved the way for a lot of us that's played the position. So, no, I'm thrilled to hear that from my counterparts, thrilled to hear that from guys that I competed against and guys that I have respect for, too, and carry themselves at a Pro Bowl Hall of Fame level, too. So, again, man, my peers have said to me time and time again they feel I should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Hopefully the voters get it right as well.
Yeah, Torry, again, Sterling Sharp, one of the best receivers I've ever seen, just had that short career, had a neck injury, which cut it short, but still, like, in that era, like, he was that guy. So, Torry, let me ask you this. When you look, we were just watching highlights of you and Isaac Bruce. Like, Isaac Bruce is in. Kurt Warner is in. Orlando Pace is in. Marshall Faulk is in. When you just, sometimes these voters might say, oh, we can't put in 5 guys from one team, but to me, that only helps your case because you put up the numbers that you did with all of that other talent doing what it said. Don't you think that's more of a feather in your cap than anything?
I think so. And I think the voters have to look at my case. They have to look at me as a player. Just as they did with Marshall, just as they did with Orlando, just as they did with Isaac, just as they did with Kurt and Aeneas, they looked at their case. They looked at what they did in the National Football League. Look at what I did in the National Football League for a decade. And what it would say to you is I was an all-decade player. I was an all-pro. I was a Super Bowl champion. All of the accolades that you can possibly amass in the league, I was that. Records in the National Football League that was set as a rookie and beyond. I was that. And beyond the greatest show on turf days, I was still that guy producing at a high level. I was that guy. So I think I hope our voters look at my case, Torry Holt, as a player, and really see what I was able to do, the impact that I was able to have in my 11 years in the National Football League.
Well said.
Torry, we're looking at the group that you were a part of, and you're talking about it, and Steve's talking about it, and I'm like thinking of all these players. Like, is there a group of skill guys in the NFL right now on a particular team that you kind of look at and go, that's a group right there? I'm not saying anybody is the greatest show on turf, but is there a team where you see a group, whether it's San Francisco or one of those teams where you go, this group of skill guys is something else?
Well, there's a number of guys. You look out in Cincinnati with the Bengals and Chase and Higgins and those dudes, and how Tyler Boyd, how they get down, how efficient they are, productive they are. I look at Tyreek Hill and Waddle down in Miami, the speed in which they you know what I mean? When you line up against those guys, you better get ready to run and run for a long time and be able to have speed to keep up with them. And then they got a coordinator that's creative and put those guys in their sweet spots to allow them to express themselves athletically. You mentioned the San Francisco 49ers. When you think of a timing system, efficient, depth, details, concepts, I think of the San Francisco 49ers. So those are a few that come to mind when I think about wide receiver groups and how they played and some of the things that emulates how we played with the greatest show on turf. One of the things that really made us special, and I say this all the time, and I look at San Francisco and other receiver groups, is we enjoyed each other's success. We enjoyed watching one another get off.
Yeah.
Actually, we saw Isaac run a particular route that was dope. We came back in practice the next week and was like, yo, we got to run it like that and even better. So we were pushing and challenging one another, but we was also excited and celebrating. And then we were very unselfish. You know, we had Marshall back in the backfield that we were handing off to, and he can kill you for days. But we didn't mind on the perimeter blocking and getting those extra blocks, extending those long runs for a guy like Marshall. So San Francisco 49ers come to mind in terms of the complete group of receivers and how they play in the receiving game and as well as how they play in the run game.
All right, so we're going to wrap this up, though, because you're talking about guys playing off of one another. Let's go back to your former team, the Rams. The way that Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, who are similar in stature, their games are pretty similar. The way that they play off of each other, from the physicality of their blocking, from their big play ability, from their catch and run ability, what can you say about that tandem and the future of that tandem?
I can say so much about that tandem. First and foremost, they're Rams. So
go ahead.
So I can go all about my Rams and our Rams receivers and the tradition that we have at the wide receiver position when you think about the Los Angeles Rams or the St. Louis Rams, Los Angeles Rams, however way you want to say Rams. Look, these dudes, man, are talented as all get out. As you see there, Puka Nacua, 1,445 yards. I think he's 100 yards away from breaking the record for a rookie. 101. I wrote it down here. 101 catches. He needs 4 to break the record. His size, the speed in which he plays, the passion in which he plays. It's fun watching Puka Nacua play the game of football. And then he has a guy in Cooper Kupp that he sees how to do it every single day in terms of the professionalism, the consistency, the work ethic. Cooper Kupp, man, I said time and time again, when you go in that meeting room, he's going to be the first person you see right up front taking notes, pertinent notes. But he also shares the information with Puka and the rest of the wide receivers on that roster. So, look, I love the wide receiver core there, the duo of those two guys. They're talented. Both are not small guys. You're talking about guys that are 6'2 plus, really nice size, thick. And the other thing about Puka Nacua, they throw him the football, but he also now is involved in the jet sweeps, and he's using that side of key first downs with his Rams offense to keep them on the field and moving the chains. And then they got a guy in Matthew Stafford right now. It's hot, and he can get them all the ball anywhere on the field.
Torry Holt showing us those hands and only compare to Brian Baldinger's when we do that. Hey, Torry, man, we're supposed to be objective and doing what we're doing. But I got to tell you, man, we're pulling for you to finally get that knock on the door. We appreciate you joining us here on the NFL Report. Again, Happy New Year, and thanks so much.
Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it. All the best.
Coming up, Jeff Chadia's first read column. We're going to break down the AFC South. This could be a division for the next few years that we're all going to be enjoying watching these young quarterbacks play. More NFL Report coming up next.
All right, we're back with our final block of the NFL Report. And for that, we're bringing in our guy, Jeff Chadia, every week. It's the first read segment. And Jeff, just for the people listening on the podcast, you have on your Michigan gear.
My colors.
Your colors as the Wolverines, of course, win a big one in the championship playoff. And James Palmer's Ohio State Buckeyes, of course, took an L to the Missouri Tigers, where I actually spent a little time.
They played a bowl game? I didn't. Me, like the rest of Ohio State, didn't know they played a bowl game.
Yeah.
Me and the team didn't know there was a bowl game. Yeah. I don't like this, though, by the way, Jeff, because we broke bread in Kansas City Saturday night with our significant others. We have a wonderful meal. Everybody's laughing. It's glorious. And then you do this to me today.
I didn't mention them at all, did I? Not once did I mention the college football
No,
playoff.
you didn't.
Not much.
We were there. I think we were there for 3 hours. You didn't say a word.
Game hadn't been played yet, James. Game had not been played yet. All right. We're going to revisit this a different time. We don't have a ton of time left. But, Jeff, in your first read column today, you talk about what's at stake, right? We're going into Week 18. A lot of things have already been decided. But only 2 playoff berths are open in the AFC. And the big conundrum really comes out of the AFC South, where the Colts, Jags, and Texans are still in play. So why don't you walk us through some of those scenarios and then push it forward to how the AFC South, they could be the determining division in the AFC for the next whatever round of years.
Well, all 3 of these teams have a chance to win the AFC South right now. Jacksonville clearly was in the front runner a few weeks ago when they were 8-3. They've fallen back to the pack with a 4-game losing streak, but they found a way to get that win last week impressively against a really bad Carolina team, obviously. And Houston and Indianapolis are sitting there too, hoping to get a break here. Now, the reality here is that somebody has to win. Somebody has to fall out of this race. Houston plays Indianapolis this week, so one of those two teams to be out. But ironically, three of these teams have shots at wild card spots at a time when you go back to the start of the year when we were thinking probably the second worst division in football.
I thought, Jeff, we also were going like, C.J. Stroud's balling in the middle of the year, then Shane Steichen somehow with his group and a backup quarterback and Gardner Minshew. It's like they just keep putting up points. We're like, this isn't sustainable to be playoff teams the rest of the way. But, man, these are nice stories. But that's not the way it is right now. And I think it's because what I just mentioned with Shane Steichen, and then you look at DeMeco Ryans with the Houston Texans. Those two guys up probably for Coach of the Year, probably sitting there right behind Steve's guy and Kevin Stefanski, but also Mike Vrabel's in this division, and you also have Doug Peterson in this division. When we look at what's moving forward with all of these teams, how much do you think the guys running these four programs are going to make what we look at with the AFC South maybe turn on its head now in the foreseeable future?
Well, you look at the AFC South from that lens, and what you're looking at is a division that has a great opportunity to really influence the AFC going forward, because what you have there with Stroud, Richardson, Will Levis, and Trevor Lawrence is four guys on rookie contracts, right? And so these teams can go out. Jacksonville's already spent money, but you have teams that can go out and really still keep building around what they have at the quarterback position, and they're well coached. So much as we talk about Kansas City and Buffalo and Cincinnati and Baltimore, now you might potentially have four more teams that can be players in this, because their brand of football in the division it's a more physical division. It's a division that, as you mentioned, is really well coached, and we're finding out that the GMs there know what they're doing too. And so, I'm excited to see what comes out of this division going forward, because nobody thought they'd have more than one playoff team, and they might have two.
How about that? How about that? So, Jeff, every week in your column, you talk about the MVP race, and it is, in the words of Vinnie Johnson of the Detroit Pistons, OVA. It is over. It is over. Lamar Jackson, the deal is sealed. I mean, what can you say? Because some people are going to say he doesn't have the stats like this. But he's the MVP. He's the best player. He's the best player in the NFL.
Well, we said this a few weeks ago, and when I wrote that big MVP column, we talked about on this, and there's going to be some wild cards in here that aren't named Brock Purdy or Dak Prescott. And Lamar was one of those people, because you knew that they were going to have some big games, and you knew they were going to have some opportunities to really showcase what the MVP could be for them. And what Lamar has done is exactly that. I mean, this was going to be a year where it was going to be less about stats and more about moments. And when you go to San Francisco and you blow out the best team in the NFL at the time, and you go and you beat the Miami Dolphins, who had one of the top two offenses in football at the time, you are making a huge statement about what you are and what you're leading. Like, I thought he had a great chance to win it just by them being the top seed. But you look at what he's done the last couple of weeks and the way he played against the Dolphins, it cemented it. He's going to get his second MVP.
All right, Jeff, under 30 seconds. Is the runner-up then Josh Allen?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. But I'll make a case for Dak Prescott. It's like Dak has got the numbers, but he's played against lesser competition, I think, than what Josh has. Josh has a ton of touchdowns and has rallied the Bills. If he didn't have the turnovers, he might have that award. But again, I think Josh Allen's done a lot to keep Buffalo in there, and I like him as a number 2 with Dak 3.
Wow. Interesting. Okay. Christian McCaffrey. Oh, that must be your OPOY. Must
be
Christian McCaffrey.
Running backs.
It's quarterback. Yeah. Oh, okay. And we're talking about it for a runner-up. Hey, Jeff, we appreciate you. Let's see what the Wolverines can do.
No, not today.
In the big game. We'll get back, but we appreciate you. Have a happy new year, the rest of the way.
It's a happy new year already, brother. Happy new year already.
There we go.
I like the Jeff Chania in person much more than the virtual Jeff Chania.
There we go. Well,
had a great time with him this weekend.
Hey, speaking of virtual, here we are, James and I. You can find us on the NFL Report. Today it's Tuesday, but typically every Monday and Thursday at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time on your free streaming apps like Roku, Tubi, Peacock, Pluto, places like that. But we're also a podcast. You You can find us on iHeartRadio and other places where you get your podcast. So, JP, you got about the final 20 seconds here, Week 18. What do you think we're going to be talking about this time next week, which will also be on a Tuesday?
Oh, man, I'm not even going to go to that, Steve. I'm going to go to Thursday when Baldy breaks down everything we need to know between that Dolphins and Bills game. Oh, it's going to be my favorite Baldy's favorite films of all time.
Let's do the podcast.